Joe Biden is expected to announce that he's got a new tax proposal along with a lot of other new spending proposals that are going to be coming down the throats of you, America. So get ready for it. He also wants $80 billion to beef up the IRS so that they can come and collect that money. So if you had some thoughts about, well, maybe I just won't pay it. Oh, no. When we're talking about confiscatory taxes, when we're talking about essentially the government coming in and stealing your life away from you in the form of taxes, Joe Biden is ready to rock and roll. $80 billion to beef up IRS audits of high earners. This story comes over from the New York Times. It says President Biden is looking to pay for his ambitious economic agenda and shift more of the nation's tax burden to the wealthy. Will propose giving the IRS an extra $80 billion and more authority over the next 10 years to crack down on tax evasion by high earners and large corporations. The additional money and enforcement power will accompany new disclosure requirements for people who own businesses like yours truly that are not organized as corporations, like many law firms and real estate partnerships and other high earners who could be hiding income from the government, which we don't do. IRS agents, okay? We pay our taxes, and it makes me mad every time we do it, but we do it. And for other high earners who could be hiding income from the government, Mr. Biden's goal is to raise hundreds of billions of dollars to pay for childcare or education and other programs while making it harder for high-earning Americans to evade or avoid taxes. If the president is successful, individuals who earn more than $400,000 a year would face a higher likelihood of a tax audit, regardless of how much income they report on their tax forms, a person familiar with the plan said. So we're going to go through some math. All right, now I did some math. Now, those of you who have been around the channel know that I am not good at this. So what I did is I did some calculations, not on the fly. I did them before the show. I probably still botched something, but we're going to go through it because I want to show you what this looks like in practice, right? We're talking about $80 billion here. What the heck does that even mean? Nobody even knows anymore because we're talking about trillions of dollars. We're talking about, a 1.3 trillion budget, 1.9 trillion corona. I can't even keep track of all the trillions of dollars that we're spending on a regular basis. What difference does $80 billion mean in the grand scheme of things? Not that much. So what we want to do is we want to compare and contrast this. How do we put that into real numbers that you and I understand? We're going to compare it to the New York Police Department, the NYPD. And in order to do that, we got to keep track of a couple different numbers. The first, of course, is this first one, $400,000 a year. What is the threshold where this new $80 billion, where does that kick in? Okay, we already have the IRS. Their budget's about $11 billion right now. So he wants to beef that up. 80 billion over 10 years. Okay, so that's another 8 billion a year. So we're going to go from 11 billion up to 19 billion dollars. So that 8 billion, which is 1/10 of the 10-year plan, now has to be applied towards whom? What is that for? Well, it's for enforcement of people who are making over $400,000 a year. Specifically, according to this article, we need more money to go after those high earners. Okay, so you follow me. 400 grand, that's the threshold. If you make more than that, this kicks in. Now, we don't even know what that means. That could mean that you're a married couple, so you're filing jointly, or you're two individual people earning. You both earn 200,000. You combine those, file a single tax filing. If that exceeds 400,000, do those two people count? Don't know, but 400,000, that's the threshold. All right, so now we know that base number. If you make more than that, you're going to be dinged by President Obama, Biden, whatever, same thing. All right, next up, we've got empowering IRS is one of the IRS proposals. He's going to unveil when he addresses Congress today. His administration will portray that effort, coupled with new taxes that it's proposing on corporations and, quote, the rich, as a way to level the tax playing field between typical American workers and very high earners who employ sophisticated efforts to minimize or avoid taxation. So we got to keep another number out here. 80 billion. It's going to be parceled out over 10 years. It's going to be a 70% increase. So we're going to keep track of all of those. All you people who are judging me on my math, 10 years, it's going to be a 70% increase over the agency's entire funding levels. The administration estimates that the financial lift is going to net $700 billion. So they're going to spend $80 billion to get $700 billion. It's pretty good ROI. Mr. Biden plans to use the money raised by the effort to help pay for his American Families Plan, which is going to detail to lawmakers tonight. Now, this plan follows another already $2.3 trillion infrastructure package. This one's going to cost $1.5 trillion. It's going to have universal pre-kindergarten, federal paid leave program, efforts to make childcare more affordable, free community college for all, and tax credits meant to fight poverty. The government's been fighting poverty my whole life, and apparently they're not doing too good about it. To help pay for that spending, the administration wants to raise taxes to 39.6%, up from 37%. They also want to increase capital gains tax rates to those who earn more than $1 million a year. Biden will also seek to raise tax on income that people earn more than $1 million a year, blah, blah, blah. All right. So we have some numbers. We've got 80 billion. Parcel that over 10 years, 8 billion a year. 8 times 10 equals 80. Got that. 70% increase. The current budget's about 11 billion. They're going to bump that up by another 8 a year, about a 70% increase. Okay, following me? All right, so now what do we know? Let's take a quick look at another story. Biden defines $400,000 as wealthy. So here's what that buys in a big city. So I want to show you this first and foremost. $400,000 really isn't that much money. So, here you have a family of 4. How do they survive off $400,000 living in an expensive metro area? Basically, if you go through all these expenses, you have a 401k contribution, monthly. We say that's $3,000. So you bring it home about $33,000 a month total, which is a lot of money, right? That is a lot of money. If you're bringing home $33,000, okay, that's a ton of money. But it goes quickly if you're living in a high income or a high area, expensive area. So we've got, taxable income after 401k, we get a tax bill. We net after you get 33 after taxes come out, because you're already getting wrecked on taxes. You get paid 33,000. You only take home 21 of that, okay? Because the government is already wrecking you. Then you have expenses, daycare, $3,000, preschool, $2,000. You have food for 4, $2,000, which is pretty inexpensive, $65 a day on average. You got a 529 plan for school, for saving for your college's kids. You got a $6,000 mortgage in a nice area, right? That's a nice area. That's not San Francisco for a family of 4, but that's a nice property. Property insurance, all of the other incidentals, umbrella, healthcare, baby, toddler, blah, 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 blah. Total expenses, another 21,000. So what do you take home at the end of the day? $3. And it's not just, San Francisco. It is San Francisco, but it's also New York City, Boston, LA, San Diego, Seattle, DC, Boston, Miami, Honolulu, and probably getting close to being Arizona pretty soon, because everybody's moving here to escape the hellholes of some of these other states. So it's a big problem. 400,000 is not that much money anyways, but those are the rich. So now you have a family of 4 living in one of those cities that's going to get wrecked by this new tax bill. So good, right? Apparently, it's not all just Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg's running around. These are actual families that are going to be wrecked as a result of this. So that's great. But the real reason I wanted to share this story is because of this number. By national measures, those making $400,000 belong to a rarefied group. They represent the top 1.8% of taxpayers. Okay, so now let's take a look at this number. We know the threshold, 400,000. We want to take the total tax base. How many people are paying taxes in America? And of those people, who are those? Let's identify the quantity of those people who are actually making more than $400,000. What percentage of the tax base is that? 1.8%. Okay, so now we know only 1.8% of everybody who pays taxes in America is going to come under scrutiny of Joe Biden's new plan. Right, so this doesn't affect most people. This is one of their talking points. This doesn't affect most people at all. It only affects these people. It's 1.8%. It's not that many people. It's just 1.8% of the taxpayers. So let's take a quick look and see what level of enforcement they want to impose on that 1.8%, because we now know only 1.8% of the people make over $400,000. Pretty small number. So we need another $8 billion a year to go after those 1.8% of people, because that's all that's paying over that's making over $400,000 in this country. Sounds like a pretty big expenditure, but I could be wrong. Let's take a look. So we go back over to the 2017 data. This is the best data that I could find on this topic. And we're going to note here that we had all taxpayers. We had 143,295,000 tax returns filed. Number of total returns. Those people who are in the top 1%, they make up 1.4 million. If you're in the top 5%, we have 7.1 million returns. So if you just do the math, if you want to find the top 1.8% on this, what we're going to do is we're going to take 143 million total returns times 0.018. And that's the 1.8% of returns that are above the $400,000 threshold. And what does that give us? We get 2.579 million returns. Okay, so now what we're trying to do, and I know this is probably mind-numbing for most of you, but what we're trying to do here is identify what portion of America is now subject to the intense scrutiny of this new IRS proposal from Joe Biden. So we know 400,000 and up. We know that only 1.8% of this country makes above $400,000. And we now know that of every single taxpayer, 1.8% of all taxpayers is 2.579 million people. So this new infrastructure is going to be focused on about 2.5 million people, according to 2017 numbers. So we're going to just round that up. We'll call it even 3 million. Let's say a lot more people, say another 500,000 people are in that threshold. Country's getting richer, great. We have 3 million people who are now subject of this new IRS enforcement scheme. Great. So we're going to round that up. And what we know already is that 80 billion spread over 10 years is 8 billion a year. So we've got some other numbers. Now, as I mentioned, we want to compare this now that we know how this works, and we know we have a population of 3 million people who are going to be enforced because that's all the people that make over 400 grand. Are there any other agencies or entities in this country that have a similar structure, and how do they work? Yes, there are. We have a number of different states and a number of different other enforcement agencies that are a part of those states. Maybe we can see how they work and see how this might apply and compare to Joe Biden's new plan. So let's take a look at the New York Police Department. We go over to New York, and you're going to see here that their budget, this is the fiscal year 2020 operating budget for the 10 largest agencies in New York. So you've got the fire department, they get about 2.1 billion. You've got Department of Corrections, 1.3 billion. You got the Department of Education, 24 billion. Over here, you have the NYPD, right? 5.6 billion. We can even say you can, basically round that up to about 6 billion. So about $6 billion every year to run the entire NYPD. Okay, the largest police agency in the country. They take $6 billion. Joe Biden wants to add on another $8 billion to the IRS. All right, so that's even bigger than the NYPD. All right, well, the NYPD is just New York. So, I mean, it's not that many people. So maybe it makes sense since we're talking about a federal agency. All right, well, let's see what the NYPD does. So if you break down their budget, we've got about 1.6 billion for patrol. We've got another 1 billion for communications, chief of the department for whatever those needs are, detectives, transits, another 494 million, school safety, 327 million, intelligence and counterterrorism, 315 million, housing bureau for the police department, 204 million. So you can see that it's not just sort of, running around doing patrol. It's a lot of administrative stuff. Actually, most of it is. Less than, I would say, maybe a third is patrol. The rest of it is all other stuff, transit, transportation, detective bureau, right? A lot of money is going into other things. And it is a big agency. So that $6 billion is being split up a bunch of different ways. Counterterrorism, school safety. And we got a housing bureau out of the NYPD. So what is $8 billion going to do for the IRS? This is what $6 billion does. That's a lot. And $6 billion gets us a lot of people too, a lot of employees. We go over to the NYPD. What does it get us? Well, 55,000 employees. You can see here, chief of personnel, this guy, Martin Morales, he's responsible for the recruitment and selection of all their employees, and says that they have 55,000 members of the department. Monitoring, assessment, training, development for all of those people. So $6 billion in New York gets us 55,000 employees who are a part of the personnel for the NYPD. And how many people live in New York? 8.419 million. All right, now this is all going to make sense in the next slide. So you can see here NYC population, the New York City population, 8.419 million. And this number is going down, right? It started trending down in about 2017. I'm going to guess it's continuing to go down as people bail out as a result of the pandemic. And so we've got a lot of numbers here. It's all going to make sense right now. Thanks for following along. So let's take a quick look and compare and contrast these two situations. So first and foremost, here's what we've got. The jurisdiction. We're going to take a look at this top row. The jurisdiction. When we're talking about jurisdiction, we're talking about the pool, the population of people that are going to be subject to this new government bureaucracy, to this new amount of oversight. What's the scope of the project? What are they trying to control? What are they trying to impact? Take a look. The NYPD, as we know, because we know the population of New York, their jurisdiction is 8.419 million people, the entire city, because they're NYPD. Biden, the IRS interrogators are going to be covering, we're going to say, a population of 3 million people. Okay, up from the 2.5, we know about 2.5 million filed tax returns over $400,000. They're in the top 1.8%. We rounded that up for 2021 numbers. So we have about 3 million people out of the total tax base, which is 150,000 filed returns. So we know that now. Then we know the cost per year. The NYPD budget is about $6 billion. We're going to say maybe $7 billion for this year. And we know that the Biden IRS interrogators, their increase of budget is going to be $8 billion. $80 billion over 10 years. It's $8 billion a year. Add that to their $11.3 billion budget already. Now we have $19.3 billion is the new budget. We're really only focused on, though, the $8 billion here, because that's the new amount. This $8 billion is being directed at these 3 million people. We're going to do further analysis on that. How many employees does the New York Police Department have? Well, we know it's about 55,000 because the office of their personnel director just told us that on the previous slide. Now, we also know, if you Google the IRS numbers, that they currently have 74,000 employees. So they're bigger than the NYPD already. And we already know from the article that their budget increase is about a 70% increase. So if we just translate that to new employees, we're going to go from about 74,000 to about 126,000. Right? Total IRS employees. But when you do the math on that, now we say we take the total new employees with the 70% increase, we subtract 74,000, the original employees. That leaves us with 52,000 new employees, roughly the same size as the entire police department for the New York Police Department. So now that we know these numbers, we can do a calculation. Under the New York Police Department, how many agents per people, how many agents per population do you get? You get one police officer for every 153 people in New York. How do you get that number? You just divide the two. Jurisdiction, 8.4 million divided by 55,000 employees. You get one agent per 153 people, one officer. You do the same calculation with the Biden IRS. Now you get 1 to 57. Okay, so the concentration is about 3 times greater. In New York, you get about 1 to 150. In the IRS, you get about 1 to 50. So it's about 3 times more intense because they're focused on you at a much higher concentration. And when you do the same calculation, you get a dollars per person breakdown. In New York, it costs $831 per person per year in order to ensure that that person gets police protection. Right? The government it's costing the government that amount of money to enforce their services. You can call it government protection, or you can call it a waste of money and harassment by the police. I don't care how you characterize it, but that's what it costs. Same story over here. Biden IRS interrogators, they're going to cost $2,666 per person per year because we're going to take the new $8 billion that they're spending. We're going to divide that by the 3 million people who are part of the jurisdiction, and we're going to get $2,666 per person. So somebody can fact check me on all the math here, but what I wanted to show you is essentially what the government is doing here. They are bringing in an entity that's even bigger in scope and size than the NYPD to focus on about 3 million people every year to make sure that they can just grind those people out and squeeze every ounce of revenue out of them for the coffers of the federal government. Now, many of those people, of course, are people who run businesses, who employ people, who start new ideas, create new things. And so what's going to happen when they start skewering them with these new agents? It's not going to go well for the government, right? And these people are just going to bail. I think some of the highest earners in this country are just going to, I've had enough, I'm out. And they'll just find a different place to relocate. Could be different cities, could be different countries. We'll see what happens, but it's not good. And you know, this some of this does make sense if you take a look at these numbers, the dollars per person. Right here, you would imagine this number to be higher in general. I'm not critical of this number. I think that makes sense because these are higher level agents. These IRS agents, they're going to be scrutinizing a ton of records, a ton of financial records from some very high earners and powerful people. So you would imagine that their technical skill set would be higher. But my point in all of this, I know this is sort of a boring topic. I've glazed over myself, but it is just to show you the heft of this. $80 billion is going to get us a national New York Police Department every year. something that is focused on just 3 million people that are the 1.8% of the highest income earners in this country, $400,000 and above, which is really not that much money for a lot of people who are living in some higher areas that have a family of four, as the numbers that I showed you from the other news site detail for us. Massive bureaucracy, massive new entity that's going to almost double the size of the IRS, and Biden's very happy about this. He's going to penalize the hell out of rich people, and we're going to see what this does. It's not good. It's not good. We have still the administration believes its efforts to invest heavily in tax collection. It says it has steadily lost personnel and remains partly stuck in the 1960s era information technology. It's going to raise more revenue than any individual tax increases by making it harder for high earners to hide income not earned from wages, which I totally don't believe that at all. I mean, I really don't believe that. I think that most, rich people, and I don't put myself in that category, not at all. Without getting into the details of my personal finances, but a lot of what I do here is being reinvested back into the business. I'm in growth mode. And when the government wants to take that money off the top, I cannot be in growth mode anymore. I can't hire more people. I can't do more marketing. It is a big problem. Then they start wondering why the unemployment starts creeping up and people are not growing anymore. It's because of these confiscatory tax policies. It's really reprehensible. And I will tell you this, the rich people that I do associate with, because I'm a part of some networking groups where I'm a tiny little minnow, a tiny fish in a big pond. They don't want to go to jail. They're not hiding their revenue from the IRS. Are you out of your mind? Somebody who's worth many millions of dollars, do you think that they're going to just, illegally hide revenue from the IRS and risk going to federal prison? Are you whacked? No, of course not. These people have financial advisors, teams of people who help move their money around legally. So if you're just going to have a bunch of people going and enforcing this to collect money from high earners, hiding income not earned from wages, according to this article, that's stupid. Because they're not doing that. They have too much at risk. They're not going to risk, saving a couple percentage points on their yearly revenue. They're not going to risk federal prison for that, most of them. Some of them will. Democrats on Capitol Hill have spent years pushing for more IRS funding, yet some conservatives say additional enforcement spending could quickly draw a political backlash, particularly from high-earning small business owners who'd become more frequent targets of audits. Yeah, I'll tell you this. Yeah, I'm not happy about it. Republicans criticized the agency repeatedly in the Obama administration for targeting conservative political groups, including several affiliated with Tea Party, for tax scrutiny. Federal watchdog concluded in 2017 that IRS officials had also targeted liberal groups, not just conservative ones, in questioning. So so it's sort of they did target those conservative groups, but they also targeted liberal groups. Maybe we don't use the IRS as a political tool for either administration. How about that? Or we just get rid of it altogether. Might be a good idea too. Many economists and tax experts welcome the proposal, which they said would help reverse years of declining enforcement. The plan is good news for honest filers and businesses, said somebody over at the Tax Law Center. Previous administrations have long talked about trying to crack down on tax evasion. Head of the IRS, Charles Rettig, told a Senate committee that the agency lacked resources to catch tax cheats, including those who hide income from cryptocurrencies. They're coming after the crypto coins, boys. It's not good for my cloud country that I'm a big fan of, but that's all right. There's some very smart people working on that problem. Way smarter than I am. We're going to defer to Balaji Srinivasan on that one. The erosion of resources at the IRS was detailed in a CBO report last year, examined the agency's work from 2010 to 2018. The annual budget declined by 20% and its staff declined by 22%. Good. Funding for activities fell by nearly a third. With less money and less staff, they were forced to become more lax at enforcing the laws. Top 1% of earners have become far less likely to be audited in recent years. That is because they are far more likely than low or middle income Americans to earn money from businesses, capital gains, or other sources that are not wages. So they, of course, want to close that gap, and they are going to do so today. They're going to unveil all of that. Now, here is Larry Kudlow, who is saying that Biden will weaponize the IRS, as Obama did in previous years, going after specific businesses for their political disposition. I don't care if they got liberal ones as well. inappropriate across the board. Fox Business Network host Larry Kudlow warned that President Biden's massive tax hike plan, particularly affecting capital gains, inheritances, and cash injection to the Internal Revenue Service, will spell disaster for American workers and U.S. global competitiveness. Here he is.
Let me get this right. President Biden has proposed the highest capital gains tax probably in history. I'm not quite sure about that, but I do know it's the highest in the past 50 years plus. At 43.4%, added with the corporate tax that gets you to over 50%, well over 50%. And then, of course, state cap gains will get you close to 60%. Nobody in Europe is even close to that. Average is 18%. Not even Bernie Sanders' beloved Sweden, which is 30%. By the way, China is 20%. And by the way, China's 25% corporate tax would be lower than our 28%. So we will be above everybody. And the combination of jacking up taxes on companies and their profits and their gains, or anytime you sell a small business, you pay capital gains, or sell a farm or a ranch. By the way, Team Biden may eliminate the stepped-up basis for capital gains around the death tax, meaning heirs would have to sell assets immediately. That's a plan that the Penn Wharton School claims would raise $113 billion. With respect, I have my doubts, and I think...
All right, so enough of that. You get the gist of it, right? Very high, not so good. But I think that's part of the plan. We're already sort of primed up for universal basic income. A lot of people are very excited about getting money from the government on a regular basis. Last week, I talked about my aunt and uncle were in town, and we had dinner that one night after the show. Then we had a brunch the following week. They were here all weekend, and we went out to a nice brunch. And it was at a very nice restaurant, and it was something that was very interesting. The service was just terrible, horrendous, right? And I'm not typically somebody who even cares about any of that. I just, whatever, I'm at a restaurant, I don't care. And we kind of noticed it, and the manager, it's a very expensive restaurant, my uncle likes to treat everybody very well. We go there, and the manager came over to the table right after the event, right after the bill was due, and came over and said something like, "I'm so sorry that the service was bad today. I need to explain myself. We have not been able to find employees. We have not been able to keep staff hired. We have raised our wages. We have offered people money to show up for interviews. Nobody wants to work because they're getting unemployment. They're getting government money. And hospitality industries are being wrecked. A lot of the low-level, entry-level position jobs are being wrecked. I'm hearing this from other attorneys, other law firms, other small businesses. They can't find entry-level help because people are already making more money off of the government subsidies. And so if you wreck small business, that induces people to demand more compensation and more benefits from the government. Those people will continue to vote a certain way. They're going to vote for one particular political party that promises them raises every year. It's the government supplanting small business with big business. It's Amazon wiping out the small guy. It's LegalZoom or one of these big corporations wiping out small law firms. It's the realtor companies, buy a home, Zillow, whatever, wiping out the small realtors. And it just goes on and on and on. It's the conglomeration, amalgamation of the bigger corporations that are working in conjunction with the government in order to squeeze out the little independent people. We see this everywhere you go. You see this on YouTube. They want to beef up the authoritative sources like CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, I think. And they want to squelch out the little voices. Same reason that the New York Times and a lot of these old institutions are freaking out about Substack and some of these other entities that allow these smaller creators to have a say and have a voice in our society. Same with the small businesses. Small businesses are the backbone of this country. They run everything around us. And they are typically at the receiving end of the government's brunt because they don't have the same leverage that these big people do. Google, Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, all of these people, all of the big tech companies, all of the big international conglomerates, They have paid lobbyists that go in and hash it out with these senators and these representatives and all of the different executive officials in any administration. I don't have that. None of my legal friends do. We don't have anything like that. We're at the mercy of the government. So when they come out here and start screaming about Amazon or Walmart or any of these people, they're all going to be able to whittle around the rules and navigate their way through this thing. Guys like me and other small business owners, the hair salon or the restaurant, we have a whole different set of hurdles that we got to deal with. And the administration, the government in general, Republicans, Democrats, whomever, it doesn't matter. They both just want to wreck your pocketbook for their own expenses. And if your business gets destroyed in the middle of it, who cares? Because that's one less contingency they have to deal with. They'd rather keep the big fat cats who are part of the multinational corporations happy because they keep their coffers full, right? Guys like me, I don't have tens of thousands of dollars to go donate to these politicians and their political action committees or any of that stuff. So what do they care about me or my law firm? They don't. They do want to make sure that they can harass the hell out of us with audits and seize more of our income every single time that we generate some value in this world. They want to take a little bit off of it. Sharon Quidney says, why only 80 billion? Why not 80 trillion? That would do a lot more damage, as well as giving many golden opportunities for pork. Well, we're trending that way, Sharon. Why not? We have, Sharon says, doesn't anybody get it that it's peoples with money who hire other people? People with money hire other people. I never got a job from somebody who didn't have more money than I did. E. Dantes says 00K. Let's not forget that if you have an LLC or sole proprietor, those revenue look like revenue, but may not all be take home. Exactly right. I have two companies, and some of that revenue I need to capture to reinvest in the company next year. Just because my revenue looks like 400K, that does not mean I personally can spend 400K. It is not disposable income. E. Dantes is 100% right. Same thing here with me and my business partner, right? We're partners at our firm. And at the end of the year, if we have any revenue that's on our books, they attribute that as personal income to us. And I'm not taking that home. I need that money for next year so that I can go hire 3 more employees, build a bigger office, do some marketing, and train my team on whatever the latest thing is. Can't do that. Got to get rid of that money. You got to spend it. Here is NY Renal MD says, any audit is time consuming and costly. I am sure Biden didn't go full asset forfeiture. I'm surprised he didn't go full out. That's probably coming down the pike. Says, how about auditing the Secret Service? Hunter Biden had his guns and misdeeds covered up by the Secret Service. If we can all just say, come on, man, forget about Hunter Biden. Give him a Medal of Freedom. We can save a ton of Secret Service cover-ups. Good to see you, doctor. It's a good point. Yeah, I mean, look, they want to audit all of the little people, but when we want to audit them, they tell us to get bent. We can't even get a friggin' body camera footage from a North Carolina judge. We have Patriot Musk says, there is anticipation that altcoins and cryptocurrency is going to skyrocket soon. This could put a lot of people over that 400,000 mark for taxes. Could this be the plan all along to tax people holding cryptocurrency? I think that, I'm not sure that I would give the government any credit on thinking that far ahead, but certainly, they definitely want to tax the cryptocurrencies, which is why a lot of people are concerned about being on the exchanges, because they're interfacing directly with the government. We have See the Veil says, unfortunately, if companies and certain individuals like Bezos did pay their fair share and not pay less in taxes than their secretaries, which I've witnessed, the GM of a company I work for paid less in taxes than an $11 an hour worker, then this tax focus by the federal government never would show up. And listen, I am for rich people paying taxes. I am not against that. I think that everybody in this country should pay taxes. Every single person in this country should pay taxes. And I've said this before on this channel. I know it's not a really popular opinion, but I honestly, if you are not a taxpayer in this country, I don't know that you have skin in the game enough that you should be participating in the governing of the country. And I mean that sincerely. I know it's not popular, but if you don't, listen, here's the downside. If you do not pay taxes, then why wouldn't you vote yourself a raise every election? You just vote yourself whatever the government wants to give you because you have no skin in the game. You're not contributing anything to it. So you can just say, yeah, no, that sounds free healthcare. Sounds great to me because I don't have to pay for it. Why wouldn't you take it? So why do people who have no skin in the game, who contribute nothing, get to dictate how the rest of the country is run and how they spend their money. It's insane. But we do it in the sake of democracy and in the sake of full participation. And anytime you even ask for a signature, because we say, hey, we might want to verify who you are when you're participating in this great American experiment, this beautiful thing that we have here called a republic. We want you to participate in it, but we just want to check to make sure you are who you say you are. Holy crap, it's the end of the world. Everybody flips out. This is Republican voter suppression and white supremacy. You have Stacey Abrams out there who is, spinning cartwheels, freaking out about this massive assault on American democracy. It's ridiculous. And it's all about political maneuvering when at the end of the day, what we end up with is a bunch of politicians who do nothing. They go around to different constituents and different groups, and they promise them everything that they want in order to induce them to vote for them. And then they deliver nothing on it. So I'm all for rich people paying taxes. I'm all for everybody in contributing equally in this American experiment. But when we start penalizing one particular group over another group, it's a problem. Good questions. All of those came over from watching the Watchers.locals.